Hello friends! Welcome to the video for week 1 of Fairy Tales and Folklore. My name is Kate and today I want to talk to you a little bit about fairy tales, folklore, legends, myths, and what all those things mean and how they differ from each other. I'll also go into a detailed history on the 2 fairy tales that I'm currently working on, diamond painting wise, and their origins and eventual changes that made them more acceptable for modern day audiences. And somewhere in there, I'll be announcing this week's prizes that we'll be giving away and how you can enter for those. Okay, so starting off, let's define some of these terms. So over everything, we have folklore, which is kind of the umbrella term, which includes everything else I'm going to talk about inside of it. Things like myths, legends, fairy tales, and folk tales are all folklore. So that means, for instance, all fairy tales are folklore, but not all folklore are fairy tales, if that makes sense. As a general term, folklore refers to tales and stories that were passed down from generation to generation, usually orally, verbally, as stories that they would tell each other, and then eventually later a lot of these were written down or collected into anthologies, and that's how we know them today. A lot of people use some of these terms kind of interchangeably, but they all do seem to have kind of a different meaning if you really look at the definitions. So starting with myths. The best way that I could find to describe myths or mythology is stories about ancient extinct belief systems, including narratives about culture heroes or legends that explained the origin of things, such as Zeus and how he was a lightning god, and that's how they explained what lightning was and where it came from back in ancient Greece. So mostly the way that I would use myths is to describe a set of beliefs that ancient people once had and believed were true in relation to how they worshipped or how they thought the world worked. And then kind of related to myths, I would say legends are similar, except that they are usually tied to a real life place with characters who are rumored to have actually existed, but the stories surrounding them are often exaggerated to be kind of larger than life. So examples of this would be like Robin Hood, or Davy Crockett, or John Henry, or Johnny Appleseed. Those are all people that history agrees probably existed, but they're assigned all of these qualities that are a little bit more extreme than the average person would be able to claim. On the other hand, folk tales and fairy tales were both stories that were told with the understanding that these were made-up stories. These were told specifically as fiction, but there's still a slight difference of connotation between folk tales and fairy tales. Folk tales tend to tell stories about places that actually exist in the world, and then they exaggerate the story and character. Those parts are made up, but it's set in a setting that is familiar to anyone listening. So some examples of folk tales are tall tales like Paul Bunyan or Anansi the Spider, whereas fairy tales usually take place in a made-up country or kingdom, and their main goal is to usually tell some kind of moral lesson. They often involve magic and good versus evil, and they usually have happy endings. That is a more modern definition of fairy tales. Back when they were first being told, a lot of times they were a lot darker in nature and they didn't always have a happy ending. Sometimes they were used as an example of what not to do, and sometimes they were a way to teach kids how to deal with the tragedy of death, since there was a lot of death in people's lives at multiple points in history. Once life expectancy started trending upward in general, especially once child life expectancy increased, fairy tales became a lot lighter because those dark lessons just weren't needed as much. I found out that the term for this is actually called Bottlerization, after Thomas and Harriet Bodler, who edited a quote-unquote family version of Shakespeare's plays. So anytime stories are changed so that they are more acceptable for children or sensitive audiences, that's referred to as Bottlerization. A couple great examples of Bottlerization are actually both the kits I'm working on right now, Sleeping Beauty and Red Riding Hood. Did you know that in the original oral traditions of Red Riding Hood, the wolf actually had unalived the grandmother before Red Riding Hood got there, and then once Red got there, the wolf offered her some of the meat from that? Red realizes what's happening and uses her wits to trick the wolf and escape. So the moral there was self-reliance and awareness of the situation. The first publicized version of Red Riding Hood was actually by Charles Perrault in 1697, published in Tales of Mother Goose. This one ended with the wolf eating Red, and the lesson there was for young women to be afraid of going out alone and talking to strangers. And he actually is the one who added the famous Red Hood. And then later on, in the 19th century, the Brothers Grimm introduced the huntsman who overcomes the wolf and frees the grandmother and Red Riding Hood from inside the wolf after they were eaten. And I guess it also kind of dilutes the moral here, because what's the moral in this story? Wait for a big man to come save you? That sounds about right. In that same collection of fairy tales by Charles Perrault, he also wrote a version of Sleeping Beauty called The Sleeping Beauty in the Wood. And this is the version that introduced the 100-year-long sleep and the fairy's blessing and curse that the Disney version is based on. But in this case, the first written version was actually somewhere in the 1300s. It says between 1330 and 1344. It also originated in France and was called Troilus and Zelandine. In this version, Troilus and Zelandine are already in love before she falls asleep. She pricks her finger on a spinning wheel, just like in the Disney movie, and gets a flax splinter stuck underneath her fingernail, which fulfills a curse that had been predicted for her previously. In my research, it was a little hard to tell where the curse came from. Some resources said an evil fairy or magical being, but there are different iterations, I guess, of the tale, because this is before it was written down. Anyway, the splinter causes her to fall into a deep sleep, and Troilus searches for her everywhere before he finally finds her asleep in a tower. When he finds that he can't wake her up, he impregnates her and then leaves. Now, this is a story that I had heard talked about before, but upon researching the actual story, it's different than I thought. He doesn't do this out of malice or unconcern for the fact that she can't consent. He is actually told by the goddess Venus that this is the only way to quote-unquote pluck the fruit and break the spell. He struggles with the morality of doing this, but because he is in love with Zelandine and being told by a god that this is what he needs to do, he does it, and then he leaves her a ring next to her for when she hopefully wakes up, as the goddess says will happen. Then, 9 months later, she gives birth to a son as she's asleep. I don't know how that's possible, but sign me up. Anyway, in an attempt to nurse, her baby suckles on the finger that had the splinter in it and removes the splinter, thus waking her up. There's actually a lot more to this story than I can summarize here, but it's pretty fascinating and a lot different than I had been led to believe up until now. So if you have a chance to check it out, I would definitely recommend it. And now it's time to talk about what we're going to be giving away this week as far as prizes go. We will be giving away 3 gift cards to 3 different shops, starting with the $15 gift card to Casey Ventures Co. This shop makes beautiful themed diamond painting trays, cover minders, and trinket trays, including this beautiful hot pink set that they themed especially for fairy tales and folklore. And during the month of February, you can use code FairyTales15 to get 15% off your order if you purchase from them. By the way, I'll make sure to link to our sponsors document down in the description, so please click that if you would like links to any of these shops. The second gift card we're giving away this week is $20 to Carissa's Craft Corner. They have also made a beautiful trinket tray for this event, along with a Putty Pal holder, and you can get both at their website, which will be linked below. And if you'd like 10% off your order, you can use the code FAIRY when you check out. Lastly, we'll be giving away a $50 gift card to Diamond Art Club. If you'd like to enter for these prizes, please make sure you filled out the Google form that's linked in the description. You only have to fill it out once for the entire event, but that will allow us to easily get your prize to you if you win. Also, make sure to double check the entry form for other important details and giveaway rules that are included in there. Once you have that filled out, please leave a comment on this video and include the word beauty somewhere in your comment. Make it part of a sentence and don't include the words giveaway in your comment, just so we don't attract any bots. Entries for the Week 1 giveaway will close at 11:59 p.m. on Wednesday, February 11th. Winners will be announced in the Week 2 video over on Katie's channel on the 14th. Good luck to everyone who enters, and thank you so much to all the shops who are sponsoring this event. We could not do this without you, and we really appreciate you. Alright, that's it for week 1 of Fairy Tales and Folklore. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you've all enjoyed week 1's video. Please be on the lookout on February 14th over on Katie's channel for the video for week 2. Farewell, everyone.